prison waiting. No one knows why they are there, and no one knows what they are guilty of. Because the affirmative would like these individuals, as well as the rest of suspected terrorists, to receive fair trials and convictions for what they deserve, we affirm the resolution. All terrorist suspects should be tried in civilian courts as opposed to military tribunals. Now, our first contention is that suspected terrorists are afforded habeas corpus in its entirety in civilian courts and not in a military tribunal. And we see that in military tribunals, these prisoners aren't being afforded the same rights that we hold dearest in our country. Furthermore, we can see key differences between military and civilian courts, which include in civilian courts, the jury is consisted of a federal judge and 12 jurors, whereas in a military court, it's run by a jury, which consists of a military judge and 5 members of a military commission. Now, another thing is, in civilian trials, the Sixth Amendment provides the right to be present at the trial, a right to a speedy trial, a right to an impartial judge and jury, and the right against excessive punishment. However, in military tribunals, there is no right from unreasonable searches or seizures. These people can't be present during deliberation and voting. There's no right to a speedy trial, no right to an impartial judge, and no right to an impartial jury. And we see that this type of hypocrisy, the fact that we're not abiding by the rules and standards that we establish in a country through our laws and policies that we hold dearest, we're violating the fundamental things that that consist of justice. And again, when we increase U.S. hypocrisy, we put the rights of others in danger, which is another impact you can look to. You can see the consequences of military tribunals at Guantanamo Bay Prison. Because of the 171 prisoners, 46 are indefinite detainees who will neither be charged nor released. Furthermore, military tribunals circumvent the right of habeas corpus to these prisoners, but it also dances around the Constitution, and it blatantly ignores international treaties. Now, moving on to our second contention, the fact is that military tribunals are only able to try crimes related to war on terrorism. The fact is that suspected terrorists may commit crimes that are not necessarily that are limited just to terrorism. But according to the Department of Justice in March 2010, around 60% of these convictions are charged under military code provisions that are not facially terrorism offenses, some of which may not have law of war analogs that would permit their trial by military commissions. Meaning that federal courts, unlike military commissions, can try suspects for offenses such as fraud, immigration, firearms, and drugs. In addition, convictions for crimes of conspiracy and material support before a military commission rather than a federal court face a greater likelihood of being overturned on appeal because those crimes were not generally considered war crimes before the Military Commissions Act. Therefore, we see that federal courts have more tools to convict terrorists than military commissions. Furthermore, the fact is the resolution specifies that these are suspected terrorists, meaning that it's not been proven that they're guilty. It is unjust for us to violate their rights if their guilt hasn't even been proven. Now, moving on to our final contention, governmental legitimacy is violated when it publicly perverts the principles and standards that they establish and hold dearest. Military courts undermine governmental legitimacy as they violate both international and domestic laws. The American justice system has been more than sufficient to deal with the war on terrorism, and it's been working for hundreds of years. There's no reason why we can't look to the system that has worked for us consistently in the past and create a military court in which we violate the fundamental principles of habeas corpus, the right to a speedy trial, the right to an impartial judge and an impartial jury. Such actions create more terrorism because it shows that the U.S. is being hypocritical and that they're not affording the same rights that they afford to their citizens and the laws that we establish as international standards. Furthermore, federal courts, according to this card by Human Rights First, federal civilian criminal courts have convicted 400 individuals on terrorism-related charges since 9/11. Military commissions have convicted only 7. Federal court convictions include convictions resulting from investigations of terrorist acts and of criminal acts by those with an identified link to international terrorism. General Colin Powell has said, "Our civilian courts have been throwing people in jail religiously. They have been very effective in putting terrorists in jail, whereas the military commissions and activities of Guantanamo have not gone up to speed to doing that kind of thing." Now, this shows that even when we're trying terrorists, it's more effective for us to use regular civilian courts as opposed to military commissions. You can see the impacts of this because first, through civilian courts, we're abiding by the standards that we establish in our justice system. We're not being hypocritical, and we're upholding the standards that we establish both domestically and internationally. Now, this promotes the United States as a promoter of peace and justice. It does not violate fundamental rights of fundamental human rights. And again, the thing with military commissions is that, first of all, they're ineffective. They've only convicted 7 terrorists, whereas federal courts have convicted over 400 on terrorism-related charges. Not only that, I've gone over how federal courts have more tools to try terrorists than military commissions. The fact that in military commissions, you're only allowed to try these terrorists on crimes related to terrorism or war crimes, whereas in federal courts, you can charge them on other offenses such as fraud, immigration, firearms, and drugs. And therefore, we see that the only option you have is to use civilian courts as opposed to military commissions because of the violations of habeas corpus that we see, the effectiveness of federal courts, and again, the fact that military tribunals would delegitimize the government and the standards that they establish both within their country and within the international committees. Therefore, we affirm.
Thank you for your speech. I'd like to ask you some questions. If the military trial was approved by the international community on the basis of habeas corpus, would it have been okay to continue trials in military?
And not necessarily, because first of all, we've proven that civilian courts are far more effective in trying terrorists, and second of all, the fact is that the international community does not approve of these military tribunals. The fact is that countries in Europe have refused to extradite terrorists to the United States because of fear that they might be tried in military tribunals. Therefore, we see that it increases tensions with allies, and it's counterproductive to our efforts.
You said that only 7 people were tried on military tribunals?
No, we said that they were only convicted in military tribunals, whereas there's been hundreds of more.
But there's only been
400 individuals convicted in federal civilian courts.
Don't you think that there are only 7 people on military tribunals because they're more potentially dangerous?
No, not necessarily. There's actually been international terrorists that are currently detained in the United States because they've been through due process here back on American soil, whereas military commissions in the United States, which is located at Guantanamo Bay, basically circumvents the justice system. It's not accountable, it's not transparent, it doesn't provide fair trials, and again, it's rejected.
You said that civilian court has the rights of that criminals. The detainees can speak and they have a federal jury, right?
Yes, we're saying that they have an impartial jury, not only that, they're far more effective in convicting terrorists.
However, don't you think that if information is leaked from these civilian courts, would it actually endanger the public?
Actually, what happens is the standards that we use for keeping certain information classified in military tribunals are based on how we establish this in federal civilian courts.
Don't you think that the criminals there will kind of work as a martyr, as a symbol for the Al-Qaeda or the terrorist organizations to have an uprising?
I think they'll have an uprising if they're not afforded the same due process, and furthermore, the resolution specifies that they're suspected terrorists, meaning that we haven't been proven that they're guilty, yet we're stripping them of the very rights that we hold dearest, and the inalienable rights of due process.
You said that on the basis of habeas corpus that it is okay to continue. You said that the military tribunals were ineffective.
Yes, we brought a card that shows the efficiency of federal courts versus military tribunals. The fact that we've had hundreds of more convictions on terrorism-related cases.
What kind of more tools are there to convict terrorists? As you,
the fact that it is that in military tribunals, you're only allowed to convict these people on crimes regarding terrorism, whereas on federal courts, we can charge them offenses such as fraud, immigration, firearms, and drug trafficking. 60% of the crimes they commit are those that are non-related to terrorism. Therefore, we can hold them accountable for the crimes they commit, not just related to terrorism, but it requires.
Hello, I'm the first speaker of the NLCS. Before I go back to my speech, I want to make a few rebuttals to the governmental side. First of all, they said that they're suspected terrorists and they're not convicted yet, and therefore that they must be tried in civilian court, which is a false logic. Military court is deciding whether they're just suspected or innocent, or they're guilty, with the authorization from the government, which also leads to the rebuttal to their argument that the military court legitimizes the country. However, this military court is authorized by the country, and it is because the country is using their way to protect their own country, which is in the opposite way legitimizing itself. And they also talked about habeas corpus, but the proposal we are going to propose have to do with habeas corpus not being violated with the recognition of the International Criminal Court. Going back to my argument, no. In this debate, the affirmative side has burden of proof to prove that every single terrorist suspect, without one exception, should be tried in civilian court. So far, they have totally failed to prove it. Our side of debate have four main reasons why not all terrorist suspects should be tried in civilian court. First of all, trying some of the suspects in military court can save lives. The military life can be sacrificed in the battlefield in Afghanistan or Pakistan if some of the terrorist suspects who have information about the United States government's army and their tactics expose them in civilian court because civilian court is open, then the soldiers of the United States can be endangered greatly, which also leads to our argument that it will in fact ultimately harm the country's security, and their tactics and locations of the military camps will be leaked. For example, in 2005, Khalid Mohammed was tried in civilian court because of some of the arguments from the judges in the United States. He bluffed out that there are many camps in Kaluza, that there are many American camps in Kaluza, which led to a bloody battle there and led to some of the deaths of the United States Army. Therefore, trying every single suspected terrorist in civilian courts can danger the lives of people, which is against the morality. Second argument is that trying all of the terrorist suspects without exception creates chaos. Some of the terrorist suspects, maybe not all, may bluff about the future terror plans and false bomb locations, which will definitely cause chaos. People will start to sell off their stock market and they will be confused. They will start to run away. There will be huge chaos in the country, even though the information can be false. And which has been already proven in 2004 when some of the terrorist suspects in Guantanamo bluffed out that there were actually dirty bombs in New York and some of the other cities in the United States, which turned out to be false, but it was broadcast throughout media and caused huge confusion. Our third argument is that information can be leaked, and those informations, we mean information of government, information that needs to be secluded. And the seclusion of military secrets has been keeping the United States safe for many years. And we already talked about how these kind of leaks can endanger the life of soldiers in Afghanistan or Pakistan. And the leaks of this information may even help the other terrorists as well. It might help them prepare better, and they might earn better tactics in terms of causing terrorism among the civilians and among the United States Army, and they will eventually threaten the security of the government, which leads to our total argument that security will be significantly damaged if we try every single terrorist suspect in civilian court. Therefore, since the national security can be hugely damaged, not all terrorist suspects should be tried in civilian court. If a terrorist suspect is deemed to be sufficient threat to many people and their trial in a public, open civilian court may risk the life of many military soldiers or civilians, as I said, then we believe it is justified to have a military and closed trial. However, we do recognize that some may be uneasy, so as a safeguard, we propose that the government have to order to hold recognition and admission from the International Criminal Court, which is about international law. They talked about habeas corpus. Yes, habeas corpus is treated in international law. If ICC believes that habeas corpus is too much damage and overweights the national security, then they will say no. Some of those should be tried in civilian courts. Yes, but if the International Criminal Court believes that national security is in real danger, despite the habeas corpus, they will say that yes, some of these are too dangerous. They must be tried in military court. Then we have the approval from the international community. As our third speaker has already cross-examined the first people, and they did not admit. However, their other arguments admit that the habeas corpus is an international enforcement, and we are saying that yes, international enforcement is important, and it will be due processed by International Criminal Court. These are reasons why some of the terrorists, not all, should be tried in military courts. Thank you.
Thank you. Is everyone ready? Thank you for your speech. I have a couple of questions I'd like to address. Now, first, talking about military commissions in general. Why do we have military commissions?
To seclude some information that might have affected national security.
So you're saying that the reason we have military commissions is to protect information?
Yes.
So if the affirmative proves today that information is actually not protected by military commissions, and the opposite happens, do you lose the round?
No, because we are saying that we actually show some cases of civilian court effectiveness. And our second speaker is going to talk about how military court has successfully proved to stay secluded.
Okay. Now, you said that there's going to be a lot of chaos and stock market crashes if information is leaked, right?
Yes.
And you cited the evidence about KSM and how we engaged in warfare, right?
You mean engaging in warfare is related to chaos?
No, to KSM or something? You talked about Sheikh
Yes,
Mohammed.
well, what I meant was, if there's false information...
And that's why we went to fight, and there was a bloody battle, right?
Yeah, no. That bloody battle was about the true information about the United States Army. And this case
Right. Okay, but who engages in war? The United States government or the public people?
The international community and the terrorists.
No, but when the United States went to fight, did they fight because of the U.S. government listening to something or because of the public listening to something?
Both, because...
So you're saying that the United States government went to war because of the public, not what they heard from the trials?
No.
So do you agree with me that even if we're in a military trial and a suspect bluffs about something, the U.S. would probably still take precaution on that information?
They'll try to think if this is true or false.
Right, but if colleague Sheikh Mohammed in his trial, let's say he was tried in the military tribunal, right? And he said, I have 30 bombs planted right now in Los Angeles. Would the United States act?
They'll seek out if it's false or true.
Right.
With other investigations.
Okay, got it. Now, having said that, do you think, we have provided evidence showing you that civilian trials actually can protect information, correct?
Some.
Okay. Now, do you agree with me that military tribunals, their provisions on securing information actually came from civilian court provisions on securing information?
Why does that matter? Because you're saying the military court is efficient because of civilian court. That just proves that military court
okay. Speaking of efficiency, how many people have been tried and convicted for terrorism acts in military commissions?
Many.
How many? Do you agree with me that is 7?
No.
Okay, can you give us a number?
Maybe 400.
So you think that 400 people, okay, we would like the second speaker to please address that information. Now, having established that, the thing I want to ask is then, if you're saying that, do you agree with me that it is more important to keep someone in custody that deserves to be in custody than fear the information? Because once someone is out, they can spread information, right?
Yeah.
So if someone is considered innocent or let out, then they have much more threat than they are in custody.
Not
correct?
always. We have shown that some cases, not all cases.
Thank you.
5 minutes.
Thank you.
We're all ready. Team Affirmative came up here to convince you that military commissions are actually abiding by international law, and he gives a very nice plan about how the international community or the International Criminal Court is actually going to be part of their plan. So they're trying to get the favor of the International Criminal Court and the international community. But how can we gain the favor of the international community when the majority of the people who we asked to send their terror suspects to Guantanamo Bay or other prison sites that we have in America are refusing to send them because they don't agree with the military commissions? We see that, first of all, that's a major fault of their plan, and second, that it's against international law and the community doesn't believe it. First of all, the Supreme Court has ruled that Al-Qaeda fighters are entitled to at least the baseline protections applicable under Common Article 13.3 of the Geneva Conventions, which just proves that we are currently not giving them the sufficient rights that they deserve under the justice system that the United States promises to give it. So, having that established, let's go on to our case, which remained largely untouched. The first point of our case is that habeas corpus issues arise because we are actually trying them in military tribunals as opposed to the civilian courts. We gave you examples of all the different types of rights that are granted in civilian courts as opposed to the ones that of the jerry-rig system of the military tribunals, where legal representation in military tribunals is not even actual, real, legitimate legal representation, or they're not even granted speedy trials. This is one of the most important points that they don't address. The fact that in military tribunals, they don't have that right. They don't have the right to a speedy trial. They basically can be detained forever, indefinitely. As we have cited in our speech, in the first speech, 46 people in Guantanamo Bay right now are indefinite detainees. These people have not been charged for their crime and are not being charged for their crime because, again, there is no provision to protect them from indefinite detention. And that's one major problem that they have not addressed so far. The second issue we brought up is the fact that civilian courts are actually capable of charging these criminals with different types of crimes that military tribunals wouldn't be capable of charging them. For example, immigration laws, firearms, fraud, all of these different types of crimes that they can actually be tried for cannot be tried for military tribunals because the military tribunals only try those crimes that are related to war crimes. For example, all the horrible things that Al-Qaeda does. These types of crimes, in conjunction with the fact that we can try them with other different types of crimes, just proves that how much more effective and how much more powerful the civilian courts are in actually defending the home country. Because we can actually detain them, we can actually give them a fair trial, in addition to the fact that we can give them a proportionate punishment. The third point we gave, which again has been remained untouched, so we can extend all of the impacts, is the fact that the civilian courts, again, are far more effective in actually logistically trying these people. Only 7 Guantanamo Bay prisons have been charged, in military tribunals have been charged, compared to the 400 people that have been charged in civilian courts. Our opponents mixed that up and said that around 400 people were tried in military tribunals, but that would take about, considering the pace of the United States, like 300 years to try that many people. But opposed to that, the civilian courts were more efficient because they have provisions to a speedy trial. And most of these prisoners have been convicted and sent to U.S. prisons where none has ever escaped. So what does that tell you? That tells you that, again, it is more effective, and the civilian courts are more effective in trying terrorists. So going on to their case, their entire case, all of their points, are based on the fact that information may be important, and the fact that that information may be leaked out and harm people, for example, U.S. soldiers and all those types of things. But again, what they don't recognize is the fact that civil courts are experts at protecting classified information. We kept saying that the rules for military commissions governing classified information are modeled after the federal and civil court rules. Military commission judges have little experience applying these rules, unlike federal and civil court judges. So what does that tell you? That tells you that military tribunals also have or not military tribunals, but civil courts also have provisions for carrying or from hiding information when it is thought that it's going to be of great national security. Now the negative team is going to come up here and say, then if they both have ways to hide information, why shouldn't we just use military tribunals? Again, for all the reasons we stated about how there is insufficient amounts of rights for the individuals of being able to protect themselves. The difference between civil courts and military tribunals is not only the fact that both of them have ways to protect information, but the fact that the civil courts are more powerful, more effective in actually guaranteeing that these people may be charged and convicted for the crimes they have committed, and the fact that some of the tools that are available in civil courts are available when in military tribunals there are not. Lastly, again, to mention the slippery slope argument about how all terror suspects are eventually going to divulge some misleading information about how there's going to be a bomb going off. If that's the case, again, we can cut that information out, or we can check it out sooner or later. But if that's not the case, again, we have Security Council, for example, we found out that it was fake, right? We have ways to check whether the information is accurate, because in the United States, there are people who actually, especially in these types of situations, when you catch a bluff or misleading information in civil courts, we can have ways to try to check that information. So that's not going to be an issue for the negative team. And for these reasons, we believe that the motion falls. Thank you.
You said civilian court is experts in treating different kinds of crimes, like many things. Why is it? Why are they experts?
Because that's their jobs.
Because
they
it's their
charge
job.
people for the crimes.
What's the job of the military court?
They charge people for war crimes.
They charge war crimes. Those war crimes include terrorism.
Yes.
So you're saying because it's his job for civilian court to punish these people, but you're denying that military court is good, efficient in treating terrorist suspects, even though it's their job? Isn't it false logic?
No, because what I'm saying is that civilian courts can charge people for terror acts as well as other types of crimes they may have committed, while opposed to the military tribunals can only charge those people for the crimes they've committed in regards to war crimes.
Okay, you talked about, do you mean that it is impossible to get international community's approval of military court?
Impossible to get approval
of international community to continue?
It seems like it right now. Not many countries that have terror suspects are willing to extradite their terror suspects to the U.S. because they don't want them to be tried in military tribunals, because they know that it's not.
Okay, so if those countries, even those countries agree that military courts approved by international criminal courts is necessary, do you agree that it is possible to get international community's recognition?
It'd be possible, but it'd be very, very unlikely, and I don't think it'll happen. Actually, I don't think it's possible.
Why is it?
I don't think it's possible. Because most of the countries that we cooperate with and our closest allies refuse to cooperate with us so long we are using military tribunals to try this.
So if we show example of United States and other allies being approved by some of those countries who have not specifically but only mentioned about refusing to cooperate, will you agree that there is a huge possibility of cooperation?
Okay, well, let's assume that people do agree that military tribunals are, for some strange reason, good. We still have all the problems that I outlined in the first and second points of my part of the speech.
Do you agree that civilian court is not perfect?
Well, yeah, nothing is perfect, but it's definitely
do you agree
a lot
that
better than
it
military tribunals.
It can be improved.
What, military civil courts?
Yes.
Improved?
How about military courts? Do you believe it can be improved?
It can be improved by not using it and sending it to civil courts, because we already have a better method of doing it.
Okay, so if military court is improved and they're at
I mean, what are you going to improve? If you're going to give them all the rights that civil courts give them, why not just try them in civil courts?
No, I mean improvement in terms of recognition of international community.
That's not improvement, because all of the things that are missing from military tribunals that are guaranteed rights that are outlined under the Geneva Conventions, it's not being granted. Thank you.
I'm going to reveal our case first. A, we didn't make up the evidence that 400 suspects were tried in military court. Actually, 421 terror suspects were tried in military court between 2006 and 2008. Also, again, this connects to evidence effectiveness that I'm going to talk about later. Also, they talk about slippery slope, but the approval of ICC, which our first speaker already mentioned, would prevent the slippery slope that you mentioned about. And during the cross-examination, you guys agreed that different crimes were held in civilian court. You guys said that it's better to have a trial in civilian court because there are experts. But there are experts of terrorists in military court, which proved their logic-based conclusion that military court is effective. Now I'm going to attack their cases. They said that military court's effectiveness come from the civilian court's effectiveness. This actually proves that they acknowledge the effectiveness of military court. And even though some cases might show the drawbacks of the military court, that signifies the needs of improvements, not throwing away the entire system. Improvements that I'm talking about here is improving the CPD's trial that they think is important. We can improve the CPD's trial in military court. They said that there has huge possibility of cooperation, and there is actually a case that military court was approved by international community. After World War II, Nazi was trial in Nuremberg. This is an example of how country can be authorized by international community in terms of trying suspects in military court, which shows our policy proposal is appropriate, which also proves that we should not try every single suspect in civilians. Now, I'm going to extend about our attacks that they're actually suspected terrorists, like they're not guilty. Following the fundamental liberal system, yes, they're terrorist suspects and they're just suspect. Actually, before the trial, even though he or she is actually committed a murder or any form of trial or terrorist, he or she is a suspect. We call suspect because we're not sure he or she committed a crime, and we choose he's guilty or not after trial. Because they said that it's nonsense to have a trial of suspect because they're not guilty. They're proving that they're talking nonsense because it is impossible to know that they're guilty or not before an actual trial, even though he or she is a suspect that seems guilty. Now I want to extend our point that the nature of war has changed. Before, the nature of war has changed when the war is between country versus country, but now these days the war is against country. Now these days the war is not a longer a war versus country. The terrorism is now international. The terrorism now is international. Okay, terrorists should be fought by international intelligence, and in reality they're fought by international intelligence. Intelligence is closely related to military, and they have their international law. Every military court have their international law that they're saying. What civilian court don't. In civilian court, the national law is followed, which makes no sense of dealing with international terrorists. Secondly, national court is not a best place to have a trial of some terrorists. Again, terrorism is international these days. If an Al-Qaeda suspect is picked up by New York civilian court, but the terrorist was planning a bomb in Pakistan, why should they try the US system if they are planning a bomb in Pakistan? Surely it shows that system that have international legitimacy that our proposal approved and allowed is better. Thank you.
You have a minute left,
Do you think that military commissions are good at classifying information?
They're good for having a trial of terrorists.
So they're good at restraining information that should be classified, correct? That should be kept secret from the public?
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree with me that such provisions made to classify information are based on civilian courts, federal courts?
Sorry?
Do you agree with me that the provisions made to classify information in military tribunals were based after those made in civilian courts?
Talk this, like, in my speech that, and you guys said that, like, it'll cause chaos when we,
Yeah, so
yeah.
So you're basically saying that keeping information secret is important, correct?
It's important for society.
So we make laws to ensure that information is kept secret in courts, correct?
Yes.
And do you agree with me that those laws that we have in military tribunals are based off of those in civilian courts?
No, the law that we are having in the military court is international law. It seems that American is applying their national law, but actually in military court they apply international law.
Okay. I'll just move on to the next question. Do you believe that people are innocent until proven guilty?
They're innocent before they have a trial.
Yes. Therefore, would you agree that it wouldn't be right to take away all of someone's rights before they're proven guilty?
This gave us evidence that they're
Okay, so according to the resolution, who are we trying?
we're trying a
Suspected terrorist, meaning this is before they've been tried, correct?
Yeah.
And you agree with me that people are innocent before proven guilty?
They're innocent, like they might be possibility that they're terrorists, and it's really high that they're terrorists, but
So they
before a
may
trial-
be, but you
but
did agree
it's
that.
really they have a really high possibility of being terrorists.
But even so, you did concede that they're innocent before proven guilty.
I'm not saying that they're innocent before a trial. Like if they are looking innocent before a trial, like if their guilt is not proved in trial, they're innocent.
Okay, and now final question. You value security over freedoms, correct?
We value national security over freedom.
Okay, so if we prove to you that civilian courts provide more security than military courts, are civilian courts better?
No, it's not necessarily because actually military court they also makes the secret.
Okay, so if both courts keep information secret, would you rather choose the court that
But the problem is that
provides
in military court
Yes.
they're expert at
and civilian
having a
courts?
trial of terrorists. But civilian court you already mentioned that there are different criminals that are tried in civilian court, which means that civilian courts are.
Alright, thanks. Is everyone ready? Alright, so the affirmative is going to analyze the debate in two main sections. The first being the idea of morality and rights, and the second being the more realistic and practical aspects, which is something that the negative seems to focus intently on, which is the idea of security and the idea of effectiveness of trial. So first, going to the moral high ground and the morality of this issue. Now, there hasn't been much discussed by the negative in this issue because they realize that rights are being violated in innocent people. We just heard a couple seconds ago actually, that you are innocent until you're proven guilty. How is it right, how is it moral to keep someone in a jail, like Guantanamo Bay, for 10 years, letting them basically waste their life there without even giving them a trial? We're not saying that these people shouldn't be tried, they should be tried, but they should be tried in an effective court with given their rights and be tried in the way that they're supposed to be, not in an ineffective system that does not provide the rights. Now, the only counterplan the negative proposes is that we're going to get the ICC to approve military courts, and they keep repeating over and over again that the US is bound by international law. That's not true. According to the Congressional Research Service, United States statute goes over international law in any of the United States laws, and furthermore, according to the Congressional Research Service, in military courts, the Secretary of Defense may prescribe rules of procedure for military commissions at his disposal, which means that literally the Secretary of Defense, one person, can override any rule of the military commission at his wish in an arbitrary manner. How is this in any way compliant to international law? The reason that they're not extraditing, other countries are not extraditing their own people, is because they're not getting approval from international law. So for the negative to come up here and say, we're going to somehow get international law for this military tribunal, which in the past has been rejected, in the future will be rejected, is completely wrong. In fact, according to that counterplan, there will be no military commissions anymore, and you have to affirm the resolution. Because according to their provisions, the international community will never approve of this, given the rights that they're violating and the enormous amounts of arbitrary rules that basically go over international law. So basically what we have clearly proven to you is that in order to uphold a legitimate system, the only way we can do this and uphold US legitimacy is to provide rights and show that the United States is willing to do what it's supposed to do. Now, the team negative comes here and says that because the United States authorized military tribunals, that obviously makes them legitimate. This is completely false. The Supreme Court said in the Congressional Research Service, and David just read this in his last speech, that the Supreme Court said that we must follow Geneva Convention Article 3, and that there has to be prescribed the basic fundamental rights that people deserve. Whether you're an international or federal or domestic criminal, whether that be a negative proposes. In other words, even if you're an international terrorist, when you are tried, you have to be given the basic rights, which the military courts do not. Now, let's move on to the second voters issue, which is the idea of practicality. And now there's two main things to this, the idea of publicity and the idea of efficiency. So first going to publicity. Basically, the negative has been repeating over and over again that there's going to be bluffing and that the civilian courts are too dangerous. Now, I want to ask you something. If the negative says that because the civilian courts are based off military courts, and then in our last cross-examination, Linda asked, are military courts effective? And he said yes. Well, if the basis of military court publicity laws are based on civilian courts and military courts are effective, then we have clearly shown you that civilian courts are just as effective, if not more effective, in hiding classified information as military tribunals. There's nothing that the negative can say to this because they agreed with us that the basis of the military court provisions are from civilian courts, that the military courts are effective, and conversely the civilian courts are as well. Now, another thing that we have to say about publicity is that he mentioned something about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, which has actually not been addressed again, about how people can bluff that there's going to be fights and then we can go over there and fight. Well, who decides who's going to fight? The government. And who's going to be present at the military tribunals? The government. Whether it's a public trial or a military trial, there's going to be information checking, there's going to be investigations so that we can find out if something is true or not, whether that's a military court or a federal court. The only difference is twofold. The first is that we're not giving the rights that they deserve, and thus we're delegitimizing the United States. And second is the next voters issue, the last one that I want to talk about, which is the efficiency of trial. Nothing has been said about the 60% of criminal acts that these terrorists will not be trying. If the negative is actually trying to value security in this round, if that's literally the only thing that they are going for, you would still affirm the resolution given the fact that these terrorists will be tried for more crimes and be convicted more. They came up here and said that 421 people have been tried. This actually goes for the affirmative disevidence because out of those 421 people, 7 people have been convicted. The conviction rates are what is important. And if we actually don't provide the people the rights, and if we don't provide the efficiency, then there clearly cannot be provisions for us to maintain the very thing that the negative wants, which is security. So because we want to uphold security and U.S. legitimacy, and also uphold the rights for these possibly innocent individuals, we affirm the resolution. Thank you very much.
Third speaker of the negative team. Today I'd like to summarize, before going on to the three clashes in this debate, I'd like to make a quick rebuttal to the affirmative side. On the affirmative side said that the military said that the military courts are effective because they have followed the example of the civilian court, but this is agreeing that military courts are also effective, and that civilian court, even though it is following, they said that it is following the example of civilian court, that it is still effective. Now I'd like to summarize this debate into 3 clashes. The first clash is that our side, the first clash is the theme of morality. Our side, our first speaker stated that sending some, not all, terrorists to military court will save the lives of military soldiers and civilians. However, the affirmative side said that military court is a violation of habeas corpus and that ICC, the International Criminal Court, will never approve. However, they agreed under the premise that ICC will not approve, under the premise that many countries will cooperate and that military will not cooperate. However, we will not cooperate because military court is not effective. However, as I said earlier in my rebuttal, they have agreed that because the military court have followed the example of civilian court, they are also effective. So if because there is also room for improvement, it is the affirmative side have failed to put any logical justification into their point, and therefore we claim the first clash point. Second is the theme of effectiveness. The affirmative side said that the military courts are slow and unable to do their job, and that civilian courts can make the process more quick and efficient. However, thinking about the security, the military court can prevent public chaos, And the affirmative side also failed to give example when military court failed to secure information, and so their logic does not make any sense because there has been several cases where civilian courts have failed to secure information. The military court has been authorized by the country and it has the right to protect the country. Third is the theme of authorization. The affirmative side said that the ICC, the the ICC will never approve of the military court. However, of the military court because of its ineffectiveness. However, we still have room to improve, and there are many signs of improvement into military courts, and they have also failed to say any points about how these military courts have failed to do their job. And the U.S. and the allies of the international world can cooperate and will make the usage of military courts more effective by improving the status and making it effective following the example of civilian courts. So it is clear that they have shown examples, but they lack the link to justification of the terrorist suspects tried in civilian courts because they lack logic, and the affirmative side may have claimed that some terrorist suspects showed to be tried in civilian court, but they totally failed to prove that all of the terrorist suspects, without exception, should be tried in civilian court. Thank you.